Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 300.
What was that?
Podcast.
I liked it. Why'd you stop him?
Are we talking Great Western Trail today?
It could be on his top 5. You don't know yet. He hasn't told you. It's not set in stone until
Sorry,
he
that
says
was
it.
that was the dairy farmer coming out. All right, let's try that again.
I want even more. Lean into it.
Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 364, Top 5 Games.
Welcome, citizens of Meeple Nation. For the next 30 minutes, sit back and enjoy.
Meeple Nation Podcast is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com. Go to their website, check them out. Find a game topper that would work great for a lonely table in your home. Every table should have a game topper.
Every table should have a game topper.
Every table should just be... They should not make regular tables anymore.
There you go.
To get started on your journey, check out GameToppersLLC.com.
I am excited about this week. But first, welcome to Meeple Nation. I'm Dave Holliday.
Now you have to keep the first part in.
Yeah!
I don't even know how to say Logan. And I'm Logan Howard.
And I'm Andy Holiday.
I got nothing. And I'm Nathan Howard.
Right on.
So this week we are not talking about Great Western Trail as much as I wish we were right now. It is not. We got a request to list our top 5 games on Instagram, but Nathan thought it'd be a really cool episode idea that we talk about our own top 5. Nathan should probably start first because he's got like 15 or 20 games on here.
Well, I'm only going to go to 5. But that's how I determined my top 5. I made a larger list of some of my favorite games. For example, here you mentioned, Logan, was 15 games. And then out of those 15, I evaluated those games, established what my all-time favorite top 5 games. So I'm going to start off with my number 5, Firefly the board game. So this is a great pickup delivery trading game based on the TV series Firefly. Canceled in its glory, in its prime, will always have a shining spot on my shelf. This, for me, has been one of my favorite games. It was my number 1 favorite game for a long time. As I've experienced more games and as I look at the joy each of these games brings me, Firefly definitely came down the list from my number 1 to my number 5. I really love the theme of the game. I love how the theme is developed in the mechanic. The theme of the game is your ship, and you need to find a crew, find a job, and make it in the verse.
It was so weird being over at Andy's house the other day and to see his copy of Firefly and it not take up an entire shelf all by itself.
It's because Andy doesn't have the big damn crate.
I thought it was a whole damn verse.
The whole damn verse is the mat that includes all the boards from the different expansions.
Oh!
The big damn crate is something that I got from Broken Token, which is a very nice wood crate. It has velvet lining inside, all divided, stores perfectly everything that the game contains.
It actually helps with setup and takedown and makes it much faster.
I totally agree.
It's one of those few games that have taken full advantage of the Watson's pre-extension and filled up the entire Watson.
And I think even with the leaves, it still fills up the Watsons. It's a game that you can play it more than 4 players. I would never recommend playing over 4 players. Perfect number for me is 3 players. 4 players if every player is very familiar with the game.
I would even say like 3 people familiar, 1 person learning. That's a good ratio for.
I'll allow that.
2 people learning the game. That's when I'm almost like, oh no.
3 to 4 is definitely the prime number. I lean more to the 3. You have your ship. You're going around the verse trying to complete jobs, crime jobs, smuggling jobs, pickup and delivery jobs. Uses all stills from the TV series, so it's all steeped in that theme. Very much one of my favorite games. If we all talk forever on our favorite games, we're going to be here for 5 hours. So I'll leave it at that. My number 5 is Firefly the board game.
Those of you who know me know that decisions come quickly.
No, they don't.
Oh. Sorry, that word does not mean what I thought it means.
Yeah, no, when we were asking for the top 5, I had mine done within a day. I had to chase Andy and Logan, but they got those in probably within a week. It was almost 3 weeks later before Dave got his list, and I'm still questioning his number 1 pick, but
I'm still questioning all of my picks.
that doesn't surprise me either.
I'm still surprised by a couple.
I have a really hard time picking a favorite of anything. The only thing I've successfully done that is women. So
Wonder Woman?
Adrian is definitely a Wonder Woman.
absolutely. Me picking a favorite of anything is just extremely difficult. I had to do similar to you, Nate. I made a larger list of a bunch of the games that I know that I really love. Asked myself a few questions. Somebody suggests we play this game. Where am I at? Am I like, oh, awesome, yes? Or am I, Seven Wonders again? How is my response when somebody suggests we play this game? I also considered, when the question is just what game do you want to play, what game am I going to offer up? I got it down to a top 5 that I was comfortable enough submitting and saying, this is my top 5. And number 5 on that list was Descent 2nd Edition. We've talked about it a lot. I mean, I don't have a whole lot more to say about it. It's just a great game. Again, those questions that I asked, my game group says, let's play Descent. I'm excited about it.
I'm excited to play it.
We need to get going some then. It's a good one. One of the things that I love about it is there's so many different characters and so many different classes that you can do so many different combinations and develop them in different ways that it's super fun. I'm really excited about it. It's one of the things I miss most about my game group in Washington is that we got to play a lot of Descent together, and that was really, really fun.
So my number 5 is Gloomhaven. We've talked about it a lot, like Dave was saying, so I don't need to go too much into it. As much as I love Gloomhaven, it just didn't get higher on my list. The other games, part of my favorite game isn't necessarily not best game, but like my experiences playing, how emotional, nostalgia, all those factor into the game. So Gloomhaven, wonderful game. I love my experiences playing with you guys, but it's my number 5.
I kind of went along the same lines, Logan. Some of the games that have nostalgia factor, some of the games that kind of along the same lines as Dave as well, that I would always be willing to sit down and play. My number 5 is Star Wars Miniatures Tabletop Wargame. This is an old game. I believe it's the predecessor to Star Wars Legion.
It's definitely before Star Wars Legion. I don't know if lead up on, but
it's similar.
There's
It's gonna be
similarities,
Other
for
than
sure.
you don't have a measurement tool. You typically play on a grid. And it actually works great with game toppers with the grid mats that you can get. You're building an army and it's based on points. Every single unit that you put in there has their own specific card, their own specific abilities, their health. It's a D20 based combat. So each side's going to build an army. Let's say you have 500 points. Each person is going to build a 500-point army. And what I like about it is that it has all the factions in Star Wars. From the Mandalorians to the Sith to Old Republic, the New Republic, every single faction there is. Plus you have all the fringe stuff you can add to any army you want. The combinations you can make of different armies that have different abilities that work well together is endless. Plus, you have all the three-dimensional terrain in there. We've had so much fun playing this game. That's my number 5. It takes a long time. It's a big time commitment to play, depending on how big of armies you make. The largest we've done was 1,000 points, and it took 12 hours to get through one battle. But we had so much fun doing it.
yeah.
So if you're willing to put the time in, and if you don't have time to do that, you can do a 100-point battle, and it's short and sweet. You get it done and over with. Absolutely love playing that game. That's my number 5.
My number 4 is Gloomhaven. I thoroughly enjoy Gloomhaven. I enjoy the deepness of the stories, the different scenarios, flow of it all. The work put into Gloomhaven shines. And it shines in my experiences, my enjoyment. It's a game that I look forward to playing. I look forward to playing with our group, completing this. Something I look forward to. So Gloomhaven was my number 4.
Number 4 for me is Terraforming Mars.
Ugh.
Obviously, Terraforming Mars has come up a ton on the podcast for a very long time.
Almost
And
as much as Gloomhaven. Almost.
Terraforming Mars is a game that I am excited to play every stinking time. Every stinking time, I have a lot of fun playing it.
I think you nailed it with stinking.
I just cannot imagine playing that game with Dave, how long a turns he takes. Oh.
Actually, I've played with Dave more than once with Terraforming Mars, and David gets a little bit of a bum rap on Terraforming Mars. I don't think he is the longest player. There might be games where you have sour experiences, but I've played some where I was definitely not waiting on Dave's turns.
I'm not sure the last time I played whose turn I was waiting on the longest. It was with Ryan, Dave, and Dennis. And I literally was playing 2 games. I would come over about 45 minutes after I had been playing this other game and taken plenty of turns, come back. Is it my turn yet? Nope. All right, just holler at me when it's my turn. I mean, it was the worst game of Terraforming Mars I've ever played. I haven't played it since.
Andy and I were actually talking about this the other day, and we think it's a strategy that Dave takes as much time as humanly possible to think out his turn so he can maximize it, but then it's a two-edged sword that cuts against you because you're so fed up with how long he took that you take a quick turn just to prove to Dave how quick you can take a turn, even though it's not as effective as his turn, and so that's why he does so much better.
There might be some logic there, because I know that, not necessarily that Dave's pitting against you on just taking a time.
I'm sure he's doing that. He's just counting in his head, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi.
Playing several games with David, there's definitely a level of analysis that Dave puts into his turns that I don't necessarily put into my turns. I'm more of an impulse player. Quite often shows up at endgame, right? It shows up by who's winning usually. It's frustrating to play against Dave a lot because Dave's analysis is usually effective. He does good at what he thinks, he does good at what he thinks. You do good at what you think, Dave. He does good with his process, but his process does take some time. And yeah, I'll acknowledge, Logan, that sometimes that wears on you, that you can make a quick turn. The example you have, Andy, where you can go play another game, come back, take your turn, and then leave. Especially you played it late at night too, didn't you?
Yeah, it was late.
It was way late.
I would not be a happy camper. I don't think anybody would ever play that game with me again. If it was a game like that, I would be, yeah.
On the flip side, my number 4 is played best late at night. Time Bomb Evolution. It is such a hoot and holler social deduction game.
Hoot and holler, huh?
Oh,
Right.
Go back to the good old... Okay, go ahead.
we played that game at Extra Life at like 2 in the morning, and Brent, he gets so hilarious how worked up he gets over games like this. And it's 2 in the morning, so he's even more worked up where his face is physically turning red. Somebody makes a decision. Oh yeah, I trust Nathan. He's not the terrorist. Oh, it is so hilarious. It's one of those games that I have such a blast playing that it's why it's on my list. It's not necessarily the best game. I think it's much better than Don't Mess with Cthulhu. So much better. I love the variety of different bombs. I like different ways in which I can prove I'm trustworthy if I'm the terrorist, to try to figure out who everybody else is. Top notch. Such an amazing game. Recently did a reprint. You should pick it up if you haven't played it yet.
So my 4th game is Runebound. And I know there's another edition out. I actually own the latest edition. I have not yet played it. One that I've played that is on my list is 2nd edition. And it has so many expansions. It is unreal how many expansions 2nd edition had. In the world of Terranoth, which is the same universe as Descent, you pick characters, and you're leveling up your characters. As you level up, you get to increase your stats, following a storyline. And the actual box expansions change the story. Different gems on the board, and there's green, yellow, blue, and red. Those different challenges are going to be the level of difficulty. Green's going to be the easiest, moving on to yellow, blue, and then red. Once you get to where people are starting to fight the red, the game's really close to being over. The character progression, the character development as you're increasing your skills, it's just a fun game. The adventure side of it, the storytelling side of it, we've played this a lot, particularly with my brothers, have had a lot of fun. It tends to be on the long side. About a 3-hour game, 3 to 4. But once again, if you're willing to put the time in, solid game. Love all the content with this game. I need to play the next edition. I haven't read the rules yet, but as much as I loved the 2nd edition, I'm sure I'll love the 3rd edition.
We definitely need to try that one. I've played Runebound, the 2nd edition that you have, just a couple of times. The thing that I walked away both of those times, I walked away frustrated, thinking that everybody else thought it was a race for the galaxy.
Dave, it's like a 3 to 4 hour game.
By the time people start working on those red things, then it goes super quick at that point. Oh crap, it's over. For me, that's...
Sometimes people just have to trigger the end game so they can go home and go to bed. Nathan, number 3.
My number 3 is Attica. Has been repurposed as U.S. Telegraph but I prefer my version of Attica. 2 to 4 player game. Players are gathering resources and trying to use resources that are available on the board to connect one shrine to the other shrine, to be the first player to connect 2 shrines. Not every game, but what usually tends to happen is the path to the shrines is blocked by other players. And so at that point, the game becomes who can put out their buildings and establish their city. Based out of Greece, so you're playing Athens, Thebes. You're playing as one of these, and you're building types of buildings. You have your main center of your building that's going to have your plaza, your gymnasium, your stadium, all these that are based around this city. Or you're going to have streets, you're going to have silver mines and a mint that you're trying to build. Each of these buildings that you build has a start building. You place your start building, you place your new token next to that start building. It doesn't cost anything. Whereas if you place it somewhere else on your map, it usually has a higher payment cost. Some of those buildings will have additional buildings that can branch off of that for free. Very much is a management of resources, where you're trying to manage resources in your hands, use the resources on the board.
I love the game, actually.
The game is amazing. It's a game that Brent and I used to be able to put it on the table, play it, put it back on the shelf, all within 15 minutes. This was a go-to game for he and I that we would just play time and time again. Still a game I thoroughly enjoy. It's one that I can get my wife to play, which makes it more accessible for me. Dave likes it. Apparently I don't play with Andy and Logan. Have you ever played it, Logan?
I was thinking about that, and I don't believe I have.
Yeah, that was always kind of a me and Brent game.
Could be when I was younger and I would come, a lot of people were there, so
Right.
that was one of those games. Oh, hey, this is before people show up, let's play this game.
Well, it's usually a longer game, but Brent and I were able to bust it out from shelf to shelf, 15 minutes. It was great.
That's why you're more hesitant to add new players or add more players. It takes that nice, sweet, super quick, fun experience into something long and drawn out. Sometimes not as fun.
Something I cherish and hold tight. So, but Attica is a great game.
Remind me if I'm wrong, but did we find an online version of that at one
Yeah,
point?
you can play it on Yukata.
That's what I thought. I really enjoy that game as well. My number 3 is not that game. It is Charterstone.
It is what?
It is Charterstone. Is that good?
All allowed.
Dennis brought this game down when he was still coming down to play, and it was while I was living in Washington, but I was down for Christmas or something, I don't know. We pulled this game out and played it, and it was so much fun. And it was my first real experience with a legacy game. Really still, I think, one of the truest legacy games with sticking to the legacy format. And I think it just did legacy really well. I went back up to Washington and I bought a copy to play with my friends in Washington. Had to play with them and give them the same taste that I had. I really want to pull it out and play it now that we've finished the 12 plays. One of the things I love about this game is it's meant to be able to still be played and enjoyed just without changing all the time now. But I really think the game itself is a solid enough game that it could be played now in its finished form, and I think it would be really enjoyable still.
I do like Charterstone a lot. It's a good, solid game.
I enjoyed my place at Charterstone. Played it twice. Well, almost twice. We never did finish our one. COVID happened, and a lot of people didn't like playing with Logan because he had probably like Andy's experience with you, Dave, where the engine that just could.
I had a different one that made everybody mad. Richie had one that was just winning.
See, mine was both of those.
That was me too. I won most of the latest games. Basically, almost got to the point where I beat Richie overall, but not quite.
Probably never be able to finish that, but it was fun. I liked it. My number 3 is Battlestar Galactica, which we just talked about in our news episode just a couple episodes ago, so we don't need to go too much into it.
4 episodes ago.
Couple, 2 couples, whatever. But Battlestar social deduction game, I like it better than Shadows over Camelot, but those are 2 games that I thoroughly enjoy. I love the options in Battlestar Galactica. If you're the trader, that you have different styles that you can play. In Shadows, I feel my choices are made if I'm a trader. This is the only way I can really affect the game, because most of it's just by chance of the progression of evil. Where in Battlestar, it's up to me and how sly and clever I can be to trick everybody about how good of a Cylon I can be. And it's the same thing for the hunting. Looking at my friends and being like, okay, are they being helpful or is this suspicious? I love that feeling, and I think Battlestar does that so well. I love the sleeper phase to where possibly there was no Cylons at the beginning and then half the table turns into Cylons for the second half of the game. It just changes up the loyalties, and what people did at the beginning of the game doesn't affect the second half of the game. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Oh, so many good things happen with that game.
The sleeper phase has the ability to change the whole feel of the game. I like that.
First time playing it was when we played it a few months ago, and I would 100% agree with you as far as comparing that to Shadows over Camelot. I find myself when we play Shadows over Camelot at the beginning, I'm like, all right, I do not want to be the traitor, because there's just not really a lot that you can do. Whereas when we play Battlestar, whether you're a human player or a Cylon player, there's a ton of stuff that you can do that is unique. I agree. I think it's far better as far as both sides being interesting, whether you're a Cylon or not, or a human player versus...
Or both.
Or in Dave's case, both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, one of my favorite things is if you're the Cylon and there's a critical mission and you risk throwing in that bad card that makes the mission fail. And I'm like, wow, where did that come from? Did that come from the Destiny deck? Is there a Cylon? Who put what in? I love just being able to sneak that in, or to like struggle and find out who really did it, or if it was a Destiny. I love that internal struggle. Great game. It's out of print. You should borrow somebody's copy. You should come play with us. Lots of options.
That is a good, solid game. My number 3 is also a game we talked about a little bit about a month ago or so, was the DC deck building game. As we stated before, I love the simplicity of this game. I got the very first version of this game. As I read the rules, I thought, this is a game I can teach my kids. My kids were still pretty little. Actually, my youngest, this game is what got him excited to read, because I told him he couldn't play until he learned how to read. That got him excited because he really wanted to play, because it's superheroes, right? Once he learned how to read, I was getting asked almost every night, can we play the superhero game? Can we play the superhero game? Even today, my kids love playing this game. It's a game I'm always willing to play. Is it the funnest game in the world? No, probably not. But the fact that I have that relationship with this game and my kids by far puts this in a solid number 3 for me.
My number 2 is a game I always look forward to playing, and that's Star Wars Imperial Assault. I've enjoyed playing the game with the app, but very much enjoy playing it one versus many. I look forward to us as a group playing it. We're slacking on our 10 for 10, based in the Star Wars universe, obviously, which is another fandom of mine that I thoroughly enjoy. We have the team that's working together to try to thwart the Empire, to complete missions, to defeat enemies. It has that whole descent feel, very similar mechanics, very similar feel, but based in the Star Wars universe, which is more my fandom than battling monsters, which is why it shines more for me than Descent. I very much enjoy this game. Growth of the heroes, developing and gaining the experience, gaining better weapons, finding better weapons, the opportunities that the dark side has to grow. And it's also a game I enjoy playing the dark side on, the one versus the many. There's never a time that when this comes up to play that I'm going to say, you know what, nah, I don't want to play that. This game is always a go for me.
I love Imperial Assault because it's such a great balance in my mind. It's not overly tilted towards the Rebels. It's not overly tilted to the Imperials. There are some missions that it's easier for the Rebels to win. Some missions it's easier for the Imperials to crush you. Overall, I think it's super well balanced.
I think it'll be interesting to play this. I've only ever played it with the app, so very interesting to play with the 5-player one versus many aspect of it. And with the app, it's geared towards the Rebels winning, right?
Right.
Versus actual game is meant to be played is competitively, so it's definitely going to be interesting to try.
I enjoy this game a lot as well. When comparing it with Descent, I lean to Descent mostly because I feel like in Descent you have a lot more options for character development, and that's one of my favorite things, the development of characters.
One of our more famous stories, because Nathan being more competitive as the Imperial, and I think you've been the only person I've played with as the Empire, right?
No, Everett tried it. I don't know if we finished or not.
So let me get this.
We were playing, I think it was the last scenario in the game, and our friend James, he had a character that was just so helpful, because his character was
still feel bad about this story.
He's a support character, but he had the ability to give other people extra abilities and to give them bonuses for their actions when he does it. Nathan, he overextended himself the very first round, and so Nathan took the opportunity and took him out.
It completely eliminated him from the game. You can wound somebody and they're still part of the game, But then if I go through and completely wound them again, then that player's eliminated. His character was, in my point of view, was so powerful that I had to get rid of him. And so I did. And it was like in the first 15, 20 minutes of the gameplay. And then he's like, well, guess I'm done here, and went home. I was like, oh.
Which is sad. I wish he would have stayed and hang out with us. Like, I kind of get it. But I love that aspect of the game where choices matter. If he didn't overextend himself to the point where I'm going to depend on Nathan's good graces about him not eliminating me, then the choice wouldn't have been there. But he made the choice, and that was it. I love that aspect of Imperial Assault.
My number 2 has already been mentioned twice in this episode, and that's Gloomhaven. One of the things that I really noticed when I was doing this and I was making my list, like I said, I made a much larger list, whittling it down. There were a couple of things. Felt like for me to really have it up as one of my favorites, it has to have been a game that I've been able to play a lot and really enjoyed multiple plays. And then the other thing that I noticed was, man, I love legacy games. If I were looking at my top 10, half of them probably or more are legacy and or games like Descent. And I think of those very similarly to legacy games in that they're campaign, character development, those things. Anyway, so Gloomhaven, top notch.
My number 2 is Eldritch Horror. It's kind of like what we were talking about in the news episode a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about Masters of the Night. Halloween's my favorite holiday, so I love horror things. I love Eldritch Horror because of the lore of the game, too. Not only is it just a solid game that's filled with misfortune, chaos, and people going crazy and the world going to crap, it is such a solid game. It hits my theme buttons. It hits a whole variety of characters. I like the 1940s fighting the apocalypse feel to it. Such a solid game for me. Nathan has a hard time with it because you don't have much interaction in between turns, which I get. Sometimes you can play with people that are a little bit more alpha gamers that just tell you have to play your turn this way, otherwise we lose. I've just ignored them because I want to do my own thing and I had fun. It's one of those games I really want to bring to the game table this year after we get so far on Nathan's goals that I'm allowed to bring games.
They're not my goals, they're our goals. Sure, remember that.
Sure.
All right, Andy Poops, what you got for number 2?
Okay, my number 2 is one of Logan's favorite games, Dominion.
Oh.
Yes.
Dominion was my 13th.
I have played the heck out of this game.
Me too.
We would spend an entire game night. Just one game after another yep. with Dominion. My wife and I have spent hours playing Dominion, just her and I. In fact, I love Dominion so much I made my own expansion for Dominion.
And it's actually pretty dang awesome. It's really cool. It's
interesting.
Great.
By far one of my favorite games. It's probably my favorite deck building. It is my favorite deck building game. And it's the first deck building game I've ever played. If it's a game I can get my wife to play, it's a good game. If it's a game I can get my wife to play over and over and over and over and over again, it is a fantastic game. Dominion fits that slot for me.
It is also super high on my list. I think the other mechanic for me that is tops is deck building.
I really like Dominion. I just hate it when a game gets too big for its britches, that there's too many cards. It becomes such a nuisance. Marvel's legendary deck building game became the same way for me. It takes so much to pull everything out.
Apparently I don't, because I added to it myself. So.
Yeah. Well, I put mine in an artist case so that my Dominion, I think, is actually in 2 artist case. I actually have one that I got from Broken Token that has the nice Dominion logo etched into the top. Looks very nice. Of course, it didn't fit all my Dominion stuff, so I have 2 of those. I think Dominion's a great game.
Yeah, I don't. It's just one of those games that I don't enjoy very much. In fact, it's a long time since I played it and I've been happy about it.
It was on my 10 for 10 2 years ago.
I didn't play it.
Yes, you did.
Did I?
Yeah.
I must have blocked the memory.
Yeah.
The only time I remember was years and years ago when Brent decided to try to be the Rat King. It didn't work out. He lost. But he was the Rat King.
Oh, all right.
All right. I think we are ready for number 1s.
Number 1s. My number 1 is Pandemic Legacy. I love this game. I've loved every experience. I've played Pandemic Season 1 3 times, Season 2 twice. I'm on my 3rd experience with you guys. I'm on my first experience with Season 0 with my wife. and hopefully a second experience with you guys. Going to what you said, Dave, legacy games are a big part of my top 20 games. Nothing has even compared to my experiences that I've had and the enjoyment I've had playing Pandemic Legacy, Season 1, Season 2, and Season 0. Kind of a cheat. It's 3 games, but it's 3 games that I've played a lot, Dave.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that you can have more than one game as your top.
What's your number one, Dave?
So my number one, I'm getting
ready to have all my retorts ready, Dave.
All of you listening that think you know me, go ahead and make your guesses.
7 Wonders.
My number one is whatever new game we've been playing lately. Heard me say over and over and over again how much I love new games, and I always want a new experience and all of that. As I was asking myself all these questions, somebody mentions a new one, that's generally the one that I'm going to say, you know what, I'd prefer to play that. On that note, though, a lot of the new games that we've played lately are high on my list as far as games that I know I would love to play again, but because of what I was talking about a minute ago, I can't put them up there yet just because, I played them 2 or 3 times. And I need to get more plays in before I could really say that's a solid, it's my top 5 or my top 10. For me, I am very comfortable saying that my favorite games to play are the new ones.
I was thoroughly convinced that your top 5 games would have just been the top 5 newest games I've played.
You were probably really impressed that it wasn't that, I'm guessing.
He just grouped all that into the first one.
Oh, I'm sure he thought that and had them listed out and was just like, no, I must do not what they think.
Well, I go back to what you said about Gloomhaven as is a game that you have to play time and time again and to have a real good feel of it, which totally contradicts your number one. But knowing you, I understand your number one choice. You are all about not necessarily the cult of the new, but the experience of the new, for sure.
My number one game, no surprise to anyone, Nemesis. I absolutely love Nemesis. I love hidden role games when they tie it into a good game with a good theme. Nemesis does that. I've had so many good experiences with it. Nathan tricked me into doing some other mission so that way he could kill me. But then I played as the aliens and my only goal was to kill Nathan. I didn't care about Ryan. Ryan could escape, but I had to kill Nathan. It was such a great game experience.
It was.
I love the variety of Nemesis. I cannot wait for Lockdown. They've done such a good job with Nemesis. I imagine only better things with Nemesis Lockdown.
Yeah, I played this game with you at SaltCon, and I had a lot of fun with it. Very fun game. I'm also excited for Lockdown to come. Like you said, we got to play it a lot.
Yes.
To make up for the amount of money that you spent on that game.
That's not why it's on my top one, but it is part of it. I have to love it for that reason, too.
My very top game we've talked about, and it is not Gloomhaven. I'm the only one that did not put Gloomhaven in my top 5.
Which I'm actually kind of surprised.
Actually, Descent Journeys in the Dark 2nd edition. I absolutely love this game. I think I like the app more than playing with the Overlord. The feel of the game with the app, I wish they would come out with more stuff on the app, but we got the 3rd edition coming, and it's built around the app. Super excited about it. But I have had so much stinking fun with this game. Dave, I don't know how many different campaigns we had going at the same time, 3 or 4 it seemed like, with different players. More than willing to break this game out with Logan before 3rd edition comes out, so we can get a good feel of what Descent is. I'm on the opposite side of the coin, Nathan. As much as I love Star Wars, I love fantasy. Along the same lines as Dave, the options, the character options you have in Descent is so broad. I'm a sucker for fantasy themes far more than futuristic themes. I love Star Wars. I've had fun with Imperial Assault, but I found myself, at least playing with the app, thinking, I still like Descent more. I think it's just personal preference at that point. Absolutely 100% my favorite number 1 game.
I'm excited for this game, but I would also want to agree with you. As much as I like Star Wars as Nathan does, those type of things that I have against Star Wars is that it's a nerd tax. Come out with just another Star Wars game, sell on the nostalgia of Star Wars. Oh look, there's a Jedi, isn't it cool? Fantasy things like Descent, they can't depend on that, so they have to build a lore around it. I like when games like Imperial Assault don't depend just on it's Star Wars. Unfortunately, they do throw out a lot of things like that.
That's always my worry with a game that has a theme like that, whether it's a Marvel or DC or Star Wars, is that it's a skin, right? I think they did a good job with Imperial Assault. One thing that bothers me is you always have the same characters that are in the movies. I like Imperial Assault that it doesn't necessarily do that. You have characters that you've never even heard of before.
Yeah.
And I love that aspect about it, that it's expanding on in the universe instead of just playing the same stuff everybody knows about.
And they do incorporate some of those main characters.
They do.
But they're allies, or they're still some of the villains. The heroes, the main people that players are playing, are not Han Solo, Chewbacca, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia.
And I like that aspect of it. You're creating your own
Same.
hero in the universe. I think that's great.
And I think Descent is a spot-on great game. I'm looking forward to Descent 3rd Edition. Forward to playing Logan and you on a 2nd edition, too. Too many games and not enough days in the year.
Told you need to guilt your wives into spending more time with me.
That's your job.
Next
but if it
time I
comes
see
from you,
Adrian-
it's different.
Oh, I've just been so sad lately. If only Dave would come play board games with me more.
She probably slap. Are you kidding me?
Dave's not spending enough time with me. So that is our top 5 games for each of us. We think we have a short list of our top 5 for our group, though. Or at least our top 3 or 4, maybe.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I definitely think that Gloomhaven is something that we've played together.
Collectively, yes.
Collectively, Gloomhaven
Absolutely.
would probably be our number 1.
Yep, I think so.
I feel safe throwing Pandemic Legacy on the list just because I've only played Season 1 all the way through, and we only started Season 2, but so far it's been such a solid game that ironed out all the details that I feel safe having awesome experiences playing Legacy.
I would definitely agree with that as well. Pandemic Season 1, arguably my favorite Legacy game that we've played. I had so much fun playing that. I really want to get into Season 2 a little bit more because we've only played, twice?
I
Once?
think we've only played once.
I thought we weren't allowed to play it again because it was on Nathan's 10 for 10 this year, and it was last year when we played it.
Yeah, that's true.
Going back to my point earlier, Clank Legacy, I think I probably like it better than this overall, but I haven't played it enough to really put it up there.
So for number 3, Nathan put on Star Wars Imperial Assault.
A couple of question marks, because we haven't all played it together.
And I was thinking the same thing about Descent, to be honest,
Right.
because Andy and I both have it on our top 5. There aren't very many games that cross over, but that's not the one that we've all played together, so it's hard to say.
If you guys can just make things up, I could just add Nemesis. Number 5, Nemesis!
I was going to include Nemesis because I think Nemesis is one that we've all enjoyed and we've all played. Not necessarily all played together, but we've all played on separate occasions and we've all very much enjoyed that game.
It's another one of those that I'm looking for permission to bring one time.
Permission to bring.
As far as that, something that we've all played, and several of us together, I think Terraforming Mars probably belongs on there.
I don't. You know, if you say permission to bring games, look, I've learned something. You can always bring games. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get played.
So what I really need to do is take
Man, I'm
advantage...
such a jerk.
What I really need to do is take advantage of not being tied down and show up an hour early and have it all set up. Oh, hey, what are we playing this week? Oh, yeah, I ignored your guys' text messages. We're playing this.
I don't think anybody would complain.
Just come in. Okay.
Hey, we don't have to set up. Sweet.
Yeah, that's like half the issue. Picking a big game like that and setting it up. Same thing we do with Gloomhaven. Behind me, we have Gloomhaven set up on the second table. The next scenario already set up, ready and anxious for us to play. And it's actually been 4 weeks since we've played now.
Yeah, we've got some
making up to do.
Gloomhaven to do.
Well, this has been our top 5. I love going through our top 5 just for the fact of reminding me how many board games I thoroughly enjoy and how many we really need to get to the table. Because they're such fun experiences. I miss cons to be able to have an excuse to be able to get a whole bunch more games to the table. Hopefully we have a chance to do something like that again soon, because SaltCon has been some of my favorite times throughout the year.
This has been one of my favorite episodes, despite the consternation put on me by making me make some decisions about my favorites.
In a timely fashion?
And absolutely.
Timely was thrown out the window. There was no timely about
But
it.
it has been super fun talking about all this stuff as well.
Dave, you and your fancy words.
Not only because of Andy's awesome southern accent that he threw us all into, or cowboy accent that he threw us all into.
I apologize.
It's too much of that Texas Roadhouse.
I guess so.
He had that for dinner. He just went into it. Gotta lean into it.
Now we should play Great Western Trail.
Until next time.
We'll see you rounding up your top 5 games. That was awful.